Hello friends, Horse here, going to be talking about more ways we could get Dead by Daylight improved. This one is less so balance options today and more quality of life stuff, as you could probably tell by reading the title of the video. Things that would genuinely just improve upon the experience without actually shafting competitive or casual players. Just nice things overall. With that being said, we're going to be starting off pretty simple. So, lockers being right next to vaults. They have the same hotkey. In a vacuum, you could say, why don't these two actions just have different keys or buttons to press so you don't do this type of thing? Well, I agree with you. Yes, that is also part of the point that I'm making. It seems odd to have one button do so many things in a game where there are dozens of keys on a keyboard and plenty of unused buttons on a controller. Have you ever been in Chase as Survivor, gone for a window vault, and get vacuumed into a locker 5 feet away from the window, then instantly grabbed out of it? Chase is now over. It feels bad. Even as killer, it's a little bit of, secondhand embarrassment. It's like, wow, you just kind of got shafted by the game there, huh? Anyway, proposal for this, assuming that it's not an insane ask, just move lockers away from vaults globally. Simple as, if for some reason this is undoable, just change the default key or button to get into a locker/window so that they're different from one another, and have an in-game announcement the same day that they change it so people don't find out the hard way. Even playing as Nemesis, I don't feel like I earned a hook when this happens in front of me, and I do sometimes, admittedly, occasionally I do need the hook, but sometimes I let them hop out of the locker and keep going, general good sportsmanship type of stuff. Moving on, we're going to be talking about anti-camp, specifically for ranged killers. My proposal for anti-camp is that it should start further away for specific killers that have an ability to hit you from much further away, or get back to the hook very quickly. I obviously don't have a specific number on the amount of meters that should be fair, but I also don't believe that Huntress, who can mollywop you from 20 meters away if they have line of sight, should have the same distance of anti-camp range as hit Dead by Daylight killer, the Pig. Anti-camp is also tenacious at best. 99 out of 100 times you will not be sitting directly by the hook regardless. And I believe this change would feel fairer than just having a range killer sitting on a hill, completely bypassing the new mechanic just because they have line of sight. And it didn't really feel like they were thought about when this mechanic was being designed. You could, in theory, also make this range larger due to killers' move speeds and power, so like Billy or Blight that are going to come straight back to the hook. But I think that's an extremely slippery slope with a lot of weaker killers that are the same speed as the top tiers at 4.6. So unless you nerf the speed of the killers that are higher on the tier list, I don't really think that's going to be the way to go about it. So just look at range killers, basically. Stuff like Nemesis, Pyramid Head, Trickster, Dracula, Huntress, etc. Things that can injure with an M2 and they can do it from a little bit of ways. And then you would have like the anti-camp meter, go up at a further range. I don't know if you'd want to increase the speed. I feel like that's again another slippery slope, but just basically from further away, range killers, they would have less ability to camp, essentially. The next idea, admittedly, is one that I have stolen. It is completely not my original idea. It seems to be a community-wide idea at this point. If there's an original source, please feel free to tell me where it is, because I am curious, of course, but I haven't found the first person to say it. So anyways, the AFK Crows should simply remove collision. This one is relatively simple, and I think it would work out fantastically for removing griefing from either side. You could no longer permanently corner trap a survivor as a toxic survivor or a killer. And if you, as a toxic survivor, were just sitting AFK on a gate, your opponents could simply walk through you and leave. Situations where you could actively go out of your way to get an AFK Crow would be extremely few and far between, and it wouldn't really be abusable, just considering how long they take to get. AFK Crows even turn off head-on when coming out of a locker, which I believe is a unique interaction to the Crows mechanic. So let's just add this new one to combat sandbagging and, being stuck in a corner all game, because that's not really fun for anybody. It would be real cool if you did. as far as more ideas that remove stalemates, or at least attempt to combat them in situations where 2 survivors are left, both hiding and hoping that the other one gets found first, and say the killer doesn't have any way of finding survivors, this new idea would come into play. The idea for this is that when 2 survivors are left, a standoff type of thing happens, similar to the endgame collapse, but not the endgame collapse. You'll know what I mean. So, when 2 survivors are remaining in the trial, Killer Instinct will reveal survivors for an amount of seconds if a certain amount of generator progress is not made in an amount of time. Now, I'm not a game designer here. I don't have a specific amount of time. It's just if the survivors are actively going out of their way to not try and complete the objective, not anything, the killer would simply get a little bit of Killer Instinct, so the game actually ends and it doesn't last for a full hour. I am just trying to avoid situations that could be considered holding the game hostage, and this is one of them. Again, these are very few and very far between, but when these games happen, it sucks. I can still think of an Oni game that I played on the Forest, the Temple of Purgation, and the game lasted 42 minutes before I found somebody, and it was terrible, genuinely. And this type of thing would completely prevent that. Even playing as a killer that can just passively find survivor info sometimes, thank you Craig and Julia, I've had matches that just go upwards of 30 minutes because my zombies don't find someone, I don't find someone, yeah, skill issue, whatever. And I don't particularly enjoy walking around with my tentacle in hand unable to find them. So in this standoff type of mode, if a certain amount of generator progress is not made in a time frame, you could have a display on screen somewhere, then Killer Instinct will reveal the survivors to the killer. Pretty simple. It would pause or reset after a chase starts, not just giving the killer permanent information on the other survivor, and then the hatch search would proceed as normal after one survivor dies. I think it would be great. Now, this next one, because you might be thinking, oh, a horse. You're a killer main, so obviously you just want killer buffs. No, this next one is actually something specifically that is good for survivors and is sort of an anti-hard slugging at 5 gens type of idea, but I do want you to hear me out on this one because it does sound a little whack when I first say it out loud, but just don't say anything until I'm done explaining, okay? Hear me out on the whole idea. I promise it's not going to be as bad as it sounds. That's all I ask. So, this anti-slugging change, what is it? Tenacity and Unbreakable are going to become base kits. With changes. I said hear me out. I'm not insane yet. I do not mean that the survivors would just get Tenacity and Unbreakable for free. They will come with changes. This idea is just to prevent notorious rude players from 4-man slugging out an entire team and having everybody bleed to death due to simply not hooking, and it not being reportable because, well, actually, technically the game can still end because they will bleed out, so it's not holding a hostage. Nobody wants to just sit there on the ground for 5 minutes. I genuinely think this is insane that it still exists in current day. So, back to the Unbreakable Tenacity proposal. Tenacity would be given to survivors. Not the movement speed increase. That is the important thing, but simply the part where you can move and recover at the same time. This will give survivors a lot more agency and more options while on the floor. A lot of players that slug say that it's much more easily counterable if they lose their slugs due to them having to go reload, find another person, infectious fright, whatever. And this would offer that as an option. Slugs could move away from where they were downed, punishing killers for what could be seen as a malicious playstyle, but not moving so quickly that you would be punished for momentary slugging. For example, you saw someone hovering with a flashlight, you turn back and the slug's already gone because oh, horceror gave them base kit the actual tenacity. They just moved 40% quicker away. No, just base crawl speed, just the ability to crawl while moving. Because right now, if you were slugged on the ground, players don't have a lot of agency with it. You have 2 choices. It's either recover to full or crawl away. And this would simply make it so you could do both, really. You could get away. Now, as far as the base kit Unbreakable thing, not with the perk's increased recovery speed that the perk itself gives, just the ability to get oneself up off the floor with a caveat to it. It would not simply be active if you have just yourself on the floor. I'm debating between its being active requirement being 2 survivors on the floor, or taking from a previous PTB, they would have to be on the floor for 45 seconds before they could stand up. This could be raised or lowered depending on how the new ability is taken. Again, that's what a PTB is for. The base kit Tenacity would already offer a way to get the first person up off the floor, assuming that they did, move away from the action, while the second second or even third person is being chased. I do believe as an idea these would be solid for helping fight the slug problem, I guess, because right now if you've seen the experiment and it's like, is slugging more efficient than hooking? And most of the time on S tier, slugging is more efficient, so it would definitely affect like people going for that kind of boring, like more efficient play style more than those just trying to play the game and hook. Again, feel free to give your thoughts on this one, because I'm still like meandering around with the actual details and like what would cause it, but like base kit tenacity, base kit unbreakable to an extent. I'm not dying on the hill of this exact iteration. I think we could do one, we could do both, we could do them, whatever. Next up, one that is a very contentious point amongst a lot of players, map offerings. Not only do these bloat the offering pool by vastly devaluing green offerings and add-ons, especially Bloody Party streamers being the most popular green add-on, map offerings are currently over 30 of the greens in the green rarity pool. A vast majority of the time, map offerings are abused to stack the deck in one's favor before the game has even begun. Sacrificial wards are, again, a band-aid fix to a wound larger than can be covered, and don't even get me started on sacrificial wards still sending you to the map regardless. So, removing map offerings. This would take the add-on offering pool for greens and it would undilute it by a vast amount, removing a lot of greens, making party streamers and green add-ons more common, which is a win-win in my book. As far as achievements go towards map-specific ones, they could be looked at, sure. I know some people bring RPD offerings to go for Outbreak Breakout because you have to open and escape 20 times on RPD. That's a little crazy. Even as a self-identified achievement whore, I think they're fine where they are. You could make Outbreak Breakout like 5 to 10 or something, because you don't need to complete it in one night. Legitimately, like, you'll just get it eventually, I promise you. It's okay. I did too. Now, alternatively, if removal is not possible, which it is, by the way, they removed the Hawkins offering when they removed the map, offerings could simply be changed to brown rarity and remove the ability to go to a certain map. Make it an anti-map instead of a go-to-a-map thing. The sack ward would have to be reworked in this scenario, but that's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make. And if you're thinking, oh, Horace, well, when a new map comes out, what's stopping people from just, like, bringing the new map offering, and then no one goes to the map and you never get to try it out? Well, I'm glad you brought that up, actually. I would simply not have them be put into the pool for, like, a month or something, and then just have the increased chance to go to that map during the event where it came out. Easy. Now, this idea, the map offering removal, does lead into another point, which would be another alternative to removing offerings if that proved to be impossible, which would be making maps more consistent. I don't mean this as making in every map a cookie cutter version of all other maps, just with different aesthetics type of deal. I mean this in a way where maps would be playable instead of just insta-lose when you go to certain maps, like Trapper on Irie, Dredge and Trickster on the game with next to no lockers upstairs, or Yamaoka with no lockers in specific corners, etc. Seeing the previous stacking the deck in their favor thing comment that I made earlier, if some maps were just not egregiously strong in one side's favor, map offerings would be less of a problem. Seeing as that does not exist, such as Midwich for Killer, Badham for Survivor, etc. This is an idea that would insist in making maps more decent for both sides. Not even going to mention how much I hate Badham here, I feel like it's implied. But generally, I don't like the idea of map offerings because it feels underhanded to me, regardless of the side I'm playing. If I am playing Killer and I get sent to Badham, I know I'm gonna have a bad time. And if I'm playing Survivor and I get sent to Midwich, I know I'm gonna have a bad time. Like, it just, I think the RNG, the randomness of Dead by Daylight is part of what makes it fun. And like, you know, sometimes I'll get a good map, sometimes I get a bad map. And I don't mind Badham as much when I'm not being sent there with an evil plot in mind. Same thing with Midwich. Now, as far as maps and their like more consistency, I guess, I think maps should have less dead zones, as sometimes survivors just die because there's nowhere to go. This does not mean that generators meant to be unsafe should be safe. It just means that there's no real active way to tell if a loop is a dead zone visually until you get into it. You see this little wood chips on the floor of the pallet and you're like, oh, well, I guess I'm dying now. I don't know how this would be implemented aside from like a loop being bright pink or something when a pallet got thrown. Like, obviously I'm not the game designer, of course, idea guy, but it's something that would be worth thinking of to further like lessen the divide between solo queue and Swift. Because if little Tommy 2-time 343 3 is going to be just running around the map throwing pallets, and you have no way of knowing if he's throwing pallets. And then you get to a loop, you're like, oh, there's no pallet here. I get hit. I run to the next loop. There's no pallet here. I get hit. I go down. I die. Thank you, Timmy Tommy, 2-time. Like, just some way of knowing. And I don't mean that people should just run windows of opportunity. That is, again, a band-aid fix. Now, next up are a couple of ideas that aren't necessarily in-game based, but more progression and fun based. Starting with Bloodweb improvement. Again! So we are going to improve auto spend, both in speed and in preloading more levels, so that there doesn't have to be a loading screen between each level. On top of this, I would like to see the ability to bulk spend with one click. You could have a slider or a typeable box to say, yes, I would like to spend amount of blood points on this character, or spend enough blood points until I reach the next prestige, and skip a lot of time wasted. This would be especially helpful when queue times are too fast, like during an event or something, you're making 400k a game, and you're wanting to play the game, but you can't because you have to spend your blood points. It's terrible. Or if you want to spend all your blood points on the other side, or another killer, or something you can't do right now without exiting the menu and going to the other role. Like, say I want to play killer, and I want to spend my blood points on one survivor, but I don't want to sit there for 20 minutes to spend them, you know? So with this auto spend, I just drop my 2 million in the survivor, I get my like 1.9 prestiges or something, and I go back to playing killer. There you go. Thirdly and lastly, of course, the ability for auto spend to prioritize items or add-ons or offerings in an order you can choose. You could have a full list of everything on it, which means every brown, yellow, green, etc. You could have a full list. You get from cakes to syringes to add-ons. You put them in the order you would like to get them, and auto spend would automatically get them for you and would prioritize things higher on the top of the list. I do occasionally, right now, miss Bloody Party streamers with auto spend because I'm clicking it like 50 something times in one go, so I kind of start to have my eyes glaze over, and I miss streamers. I miss things that I want. I miss add-ons that I want, and it feels bad. So this would just make it so that never happens again. I get the argument of just pay attention, but when I am actively pressing it for the 1000th time this week, I get tired of looking, you know what I mean? So it would be a really nice option to have, you know, just auto spend, make it better, allow bulk spend, it'd be nice. Now, last but not least, our final idea, the random loadout button. This was briefly brought up during my last video on the new player experience, but people enjoy Chaos Shuffle, so why not just make it an option? Add a blood point incentive to doing so, you get rewarded for variety, and then of course perks overall will need to be looked at, so some are less abysmal, but not the current point to be made here. More talk about this in another video later on. More perk variety would be good, as plenty of people complain about either side being cookie cutter loadouts. The idea is that if there was incentive to run different builds, people might stray away from 4 slowdown or 4 gen perk type builds. Being out perked as an idea will also be talked about in another one, but this is more of a carrot to try new things as opposed to a stick for using things known to be good. I like random loadouts. I think they're fun. And really, that's all we've got for quality of life stuff. Is there anything you think I missed? I know I definitely missed something. So if there's something you think would be cool to be added, feel free to share down below. I love yapping about DBD and having nuanced discussion. I'll have further videos in the future talking about balance. This is just stuff that I think would be general improvements to the DBD formula. Anyways, thanks for watching. Don't forget to do all the YouTube stuff, like, comment, and subscribe. I play Nemesis mainly here on Twitch 3 days a week, and I have a community Swift night on Friday. So most of my content is Nemesis based. This is just kind of part of my series of branching out. How can we improve Dead by Daylight? Feel free to come by and join the community. You know, I love having you guys. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye-bye.